Okay, tonight we've got a special event. Don Frank's going to show us how he come up with some different ways of fixing cracks.
All right.
Take it away, Don.
Okay, thank you. Hey, good evening. Thanks for having me. A little bit of my background. I was a full-time taxidermist for 42 years and just retired this last year. And I specialized mainly in fish. In fact, that's all I did for the last 30 years was fish and fish reproductions more than anything else, fiberglass fish reproductions of saltwater, freshwater, and everything in between, South American fish. So there are some products that are widely known in the taxidermy industry that woodworkers don't know anything about. And I'm going to talk about two of the three are taxidermy related. The third one, I'll be surprised if somebody's familiar with it also. And the two in the taxidermy industry are epoxies that one ends up being opaque, the other one ends up being translucent or kind of amber colored when it's mixed up. Both of them real strong, both of them have completely different properties and reason why you might use them. We've all filled cracks with CA glue and sawdust and Elmer's glue and coffee grounds and everything else we can think of to fix cracks or fill things and do things with turquoise and things to embellish pieces. And so my uses for these aren't necessarily just fixing things, it's also enhancing things that you want to fill rather than leave as a crack or a void in something, whether it's a bowl or a hollow film. And both of these products make it really, really easy and quick to do. And they've stood the test of time. In the taxidermy industry, they've been used for 35 years. And you have a real similar situation in taxidermy mounts, deer heads and that sort of thing, in that humidity and temperature changes affect tanned deer skin or something the same way that it affects wood. It moves slightly, and both of these products are extremely good about sticking and staying put and not cracking and not coming off and all of that. So they've kind of stood the test of time in that industry. And from my experience on wood carving and woodworking both, they've worked really, really well. I've done a lot of wood carving over the years, primarily a long time ago, but there's a lot of my work in the Bass Pro Museum down in Springfield, a big world record size fish that were carved out of wood. And the attachment on fins and that type of thing was all done using these type of epoxies. So I absolutely trust them on anything wood related that I would use them for. The reason for using them, sometimes it's just a personal decision of whether you want to leave something or fix it. In this particular piece, this little hollow form, there's a couple of voids on the back side of it that you could leave alone. You could leave and they'd be perfectly fine. If you decide to fill them, they're real quick and easy to fill. On this particular one, where the hole is big enough that you can get into the inside of it, you could simply take a piece of the silver tape like they sell at any Home Depot or Lowe's, and that's super sticky stuff. You can piece that off, put it on the inside, use these to fill the crack, let it dry for at least a day, come back and sand it and finish it, and it's a one and done type of thing. Other pieces that you might do, this piece of cherry burl has all kinds of imperfections and things in it. And on this piece, I wouldn't probably do anything to it. I would just leave the defects for what they are when it's finished and done. So I probably won't do anything on that. On this redbud little hollow form, same thing, big cracks and voids on it. Everybody's seen all the different ways of filling things with resin and that sort of thing. I'm not going to talk about that, but I've done a fair amount of it. And you know, things with voids and holes are perfect for, you know, for that type of thing, is showing off the defects on it. But on this particular piece, I'm not going to do anything on it. This was a piece of the same wood. It has a small little radial crack on the side of it here. I'll probably do something with that. And this particular piece was so ant-eaten on the inside that as I began to turn, this section in the center here is absolutely just eaten out. It's just paper thin in here. So as I started to turn it, I noticed I was getting a lot of movement and chatter on the thing, and I got to looking at it and I realized how thin that was. So these epoxies will actually adhere to green wood and do a pretty good job of holding it together. So I just simply filled these areas with some of the epoxy, put a bag over it overnight, and came back and finished turning it the next day, and it worked well enough to hold it together and keep this from completely blowing out. There's a little radial crack that's in there since it's done it, but again, I'll fix this and this on that particular piece. So the reasons for doing it are your own choice on whether you want to fix something or not. And then there's ones that you don't have any choice but to fix. A friend in our Kansas City club this week brought over a great big 20-inch walnut bowl that had developed a crack that went right up by the side of the tenon and split down both sides, and we mixed up some of this, and he used it to fill and repair that, and it worked really well, and went really quick too. Other things that I would consider fixing is on this. On the last demo I did a little sample on this. This box elder burl, the hole in the center that it was hollowed from was, my placement on the way that I set it up on the lathe wasn't spectacular, so the hole opening didn't end up where I didn't think it through, and I didn't like the way the hole opening was on it. And in part of that, the bark broke out on this top section here on this, and then I don't like the half curved moon on here too. So at the last demo, I used some of this epoxy and just made a simulated bark on this edge, and then on this one I'll do the same thing. I'll round off this point, and then I'll just replace what looks like bark with the epoxy. And again, it's quick and easy to do. This piece here, it has the dark bark edge on it. You're welcome to take your pocket knife to it as I pass this around, and you can test it to see how well it holds, because I'm going to grind this off anyway and redo it. But it'll give you an idea of it. This box elder burl, when I set it up, I flattened it. It was a real odd shape, and I flattened an area with a chainsaw to put my tailstock, and I got a little bit too big on it. So I have an area of bark that I've ground out here with a chainsaw that stands out. So on this piece, again, I'll rebuild that with a little bit of epoxy and require a little bit of acrylic paint as well to blend this in and make it look like that mistake was never there.
What smaller chainsaw do you have?
I'm sorry, what?
You said, well, how big is your chainsaw?
I had a little battery-powered Ryobi that's got a 16-inch bar that I use indoors when I'm trimming stuff up. So I just used the tip of it to knock the knob was kind of going at an angle, and I just needed to knock it off and flatten an area, but I got a little carried away. The the two types of epoxy. Let me back up first before I go to the epoxy. The one thing that I'm not going to demo tonight that I'm going to tell you about, and I bought this stuff thinking that it would have some application on wood turning. It has a lot more application on any flat work that you do. This is a high temperature hot glue that's used in the flooring industry, and it's approved in the flooring industry for quick repairs of knot holes and that type of thing, that anything that's flooring related. Because this stuff it's just looks like a typical hot glue stick, but they're real high temperature, and you have to use a glue gun that has, you know, higher. This one has 3 heat settings on it, so you can get real high temperature on it. And basically, you just shoot some glue. You know, if you're filling a hole, you shoot the hot glue into the hole, and then take a piece of aluminum bar and just you overfill that spot and kind of let it mound up, and then take an aluminum bar and just push down on it and just flatten it down, and it'll push it down into the cavity. And if you put enough in there to allow for the cooling of the hot glue, it shrinks down slightly, and so you kind of overfill it and you push down on it and flatten it for a few seconds, 10 or 20 seconds. The aluminum bar cools it down, and then I use just a flat blade razor blade, you know, and trim it. The company that sells this stuff, they have a little planer bar that if you were doing a lot of it, the planer bar would be worth whatever they charge for it, because it has a little box handle on it, and you can just trim it off clean, and it cuts clean enough that you're done. You don't have to do anything to it. So on big holes, on flat work and that type of thing, you might write down or take a look at the name of that, and look at their website. They have some good videos on it. But on wood turning, I haven't used it a lot, just because you're always dealing with curved surfaces and that type of thing, and you're generally dealing with holes that go all the way through. So I just haven't experimented a lot with it on wood turning.
Is there anything special about using an aluminum bar?
I'm sure you could use a steel bar, but you want something kind of heavy that it's just acting as a heat sink, basically, to just really cool it down fast. And on a bigger of a weight or something, they'll hold it on there for 30 seconds or something to cool it down. And the trick is just catching the hot glue at the right temperature so that it trims off real easily. If you let it get too hard, then it gets to be hard to trim off flat with the little planer. But it's neat stuff. There's on these two epoxies that I'm using, you'll either have to go to Amazon or one of the taxidermy supply companies to find it. This one is a taxidermy supply company out of Iowa that you can normally get stuff the next day or within 2 days or something, and their pricing is actually better in here on a lot of things than what you can buy it elsewhere for. And but they have a ton of other products, you know, paintbrushes and paints and modeling tools and all of that, and you can find a lot of stuff in there that you might like. Both of these products can be tinted with acrylic paints or trans tint dyes, or you can add metallic powders to them to mix in, or something that works really well is that there are some powdered dyes. That the powdered dyes are essentially, think of condensed tempera paint, powdered tempera paint. Tempera paint would work, but this stuff is way stronger than any powdered tempera paint that you would use. And it's actually mortar dye. They use it in the construction industry for, you know, for coloring concrete. but it's hard to find it in less than a 40-pound bag. And this company sells the stuff in little sample bags like that. And even though that bag's not very big, that will last for 2 or 3 years. It takes very little of that to actually color something dark. They have, all the bright colors, but they have tans and dark browns and blacks and things if you're wanting something fairly dark. And the only place that I've found that stuff through a catalog in a smaller quantity is this place. It's Industrial Art Supply in Minnesota, and they have all kinds of doodads and gadgets and stuff. It's kind of a fun catalog to look through. But those dies are, you can buy those dies for, I don't know, $1.50 or something a bag, or a bunch of sorted colors of them for under $10. So you can get a lifetime supply really easy on it. The reason for the dies, I use the dies generally on this epoxy, on this one that's kind of like cookie dough, and it's called Epoxy Sculpt. It has an A and a B. You get 2 quarts of it, or 2. They make a smaller quantity of it. You get 2 of them, and basically all you do is just dig out an equal portion of each one, and the easiest way to mix it is to just drop those in warm water, really warm water, and just let them set and warm up. Or if I'm mixing a bigger batch of it, I just turn on the sink on warm water and just mix it with my hands under the stream of warm water, and it softens it up. It does make it kick off a little bit faster too, but it makes it real soft and creamy. That epoxy is the one that I add the powdered dyes to normally, in order to, if I'm filling a crack that is just going to be dark brown or tan or something like that, just a solid uniform color, I would just hand mix this stuff up with my fingers and put it on a tray, or I just use a piece of cardboard with some packing tape on it, and mix the stuff up, add a little bit of the powdered dye to it, and put it on, trowel it in with a trowel. And I'll show you and I'll tell you what, I'm going to pass this around. The other one is a translucent epoxy, 2-part epoxy. Again, you have an A and a B side on it, and it'll end up kind of, sort of amber colored. This is it. That's the one that's a little more amber colored. On the pink sample, I just added a little bit of metallic dye into it. These aren't completely cured. I just mixed these up this morning, so this is the first one that's more like a cookie dough. But the translucent one, the thing that's kind of nice about it is a lot of people love a turquoise type look, and mesquite or dark wood or walnut or something that you do, they'll add turquoise to it, and you can create a really nice similar type look to turquoise with this one real easily, and I'll show you how I go about that. So this is a sample of the opaque one and the turquoise looking sort of one on how they would look in the wood. Any questions up to now? Yes?
Have you used millet pup?
I have. Millet putt's real similar to these. It's just more expensive, but it's the European version of the same type of epoxy. There's also a plumber's epoxy that's real similar. You can buy some. I haven't looked for it for a long time. You used to be able to buy it in a Home Depot or Lowe's or hardware store, and it came in 2 little cardboard tubes, and you you'd slice off, a piece of each one and mix it together. That's a real similar product.
It's similar to wood dough.
If it's the two-part wood dough, there's the wood dough I've seen, some of it's just stuff that just,
The donut with it.
yeah, that's probably a similar product on, I haven't tried that one, but it's probably a similar stuff. The thing that is nice about this stuff is you can mix it with your hands. It's just real easy to mix. And I've been using this stuff for 35 years, and a lot of it, and I've never noticed, anything that it's done. But it does mix up really well. Doesn't take much to get it. Probably get my head.
Ever have any trouble getting it to bond?
No, it bonds really well. I mean, if you had something oily, you'd have a problem, but
I just wonder, mixing it in water, if that would.
no, the water doesn't hurt a thing. And in the taxidermy industry, you're filling something with this and then using a brush and water to smooth it out, to actually smooth it. So the water doesn't hurt a thing, and it doesn't impair the drying at all. See if I'm still here. This one, to give you an idea, which this one is the epoxy sculpt. If you add, I dropped this bucket and one of these little things kind of exploded. The orange was upside down or something and got all over. I've got a complete mess here, but let me see if I can find a brown. Okay, that's just a kind of a mild brown. The only thing about mixing these dyes is that if you do it with your fingers, you're going to stain your fingers. It'll stain your fingers real quick. So I usually, when I'm mixing the paint or the dye, either one, I just use a little modeling tool.
How long do you have to mix it? How long do you have to mix it?
You can tell when you're hand mixing it with the warm water, when it just starts getting creamy. You can tell when it's mixed up. It doesn't take long to mix it.
How long is it open?
You have at least 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It kind of depends on what you're doing with it. If you're wanting it to be as soft as possible, 15 or 20 minutes. Sometimes it works a little better to actually let it start to kick off a little bit, like on the bark, trying to make bark or something. It's way easier if you kind of put it on, and I'll use a piece of, I'm trying to do bark, I'll use a little piece of styrofoam or something and just dip it in water and just start kind of pressing it in with, tear a piece of this off and get a different shape, and just kind of texture it, and then just leave it for a little while, and then come back with a different modeling tool of some sort, with like, this is like a sponge type thing that you can find at Michael's or Hobby Lobby or something, and this will give you a little different type of texture. So just trying a variety of things to get a texture, but in that 20 to 30 minute range, it's not as sticky and it doesn't move as much, and so you can actually control it a little more and make it do some things that you can't do when it's early on. But to fill a hole, I'm not going to worry about doing the back side. It's just as easy as just shoving it in. I will tell you, I generally, if I'm filling a crack or a hole or something like that, I'm doing this after the piece is turned and before it's completely sanded, but it's dry. And if you have a crack or something like the one piece wherever I disappeared to. If you have a crack that you're trying to fill and you're not to the point where you want to put any finish on it, it works well to just take a piece of masking tape and just run a piece of masking tape along one edge of the crack and another one on the other side of the crack, because then you can just, go crazy with applying it and get it really pushed down in there. You're not worried about the pigment staining the wood on each side of it. If you have any concerns that it's going to stain the wood, which the epoxy itself is not a problem, it's just the powdered dyes and acrylic paints, you don't want to drive those down into the dry fibers and stuff and get something that you can't sand back out. So a lot of times I'll put one coat of finish on something. This has just a coat of shellac, I believe, on it, and this had a crack going up, there was actually a bark inclusion that was going up this side, and I'll fill it, and then and I filled this morning, but I'm sure it's probably sandable now to a certain degree. The stuff does sand really nice, but on anything that you're worried about it staining, if you can get a coat of finish on there, even if you just brushed on a coat of finish in that spot or something, shellac or whatever you're going to use to kind of seal it, lacquer or whatever your end finish is going to be, then you don't have to worry about about the stuff staining your edge.
You leave it proud so you can see.
You do leave it proud, yeah. You will notice that it will drop down just a little bit sometimes. You'll get just a real slight amount of shrinkage. So if if your crack is like that, and if you can leave a little bit of a hump on it, it's way easier to do that than to be chintzy on it, because you know that you can just sand it flat and you're done, and you won't have to come back a second time and add more. If you do miss a spot and you need to go back and add more, it sticks to itself and there's no problem doing it. It just makes one more step.
Can you return it?
You can, yeah. The stuff turns reasonably well, and so that's not a problem. I generally don't, just because I'm usually past that point that I'm going to be returning it. I'm usually doing any of these repairs at the point that I'm real close to finishing it, completely sanding and finishing it.
What if you need to stabilize the piece?
Stabilize.
Yeah, if you've got a crack that runs to a point where it's flexing with you.
Oh, while you're turning it?
Right.
Yeah, if you had a piece, that's kind of the way this one was. This one, I really wasn't sure that it was going to stay together, so that's what I did on this one, is just mix some of this up and put it in as just something to kind of hold it together.
Sure.
And then I finished. I made one more pass, I believe, on it, and then sanded it, after that. So it did keep it together. But so it does. The fact that it likes water means that it's pretty friendly with green wood. So.
How wide of a crack can you fill and still be able to hold its integrity?
I'd say that's kind of a loaded question, because the crack, if the piece is really thin at the top and thick at the bottom or something, and that's causing that crack to form, as opposed to the pith being there, or a knot or some kind of inclusion or something like that's causing it. If you get to the point that you're deciding whether you're going to save a piece or not, it's a real cheap, easy test, because you'll know tomorrow on whether or not you want to do it or not. And you can, cracks and repairs, everybody looks at those differently. If a lot of people use, sawdust off of the piece that was made to try and get the color as close as possible and make the crack kind of disappear. And that's fine if you can pull it off on and really make it disappear. A lot of times, sometimes getting close makes things, makes them stand out more than what you would like. And so a lot of times I'll go with something dark, or just, not try to hide it at all. But if you are trying to make it as non-apparent as possible, you can take this stuff and mix up a couple of little small batches of different color, and then just take a modeling tool or take a little pen or something and put a little bit on, and then just intermix and in fact, I'll just do a little thing here, and make it kind of a mottled or marbled type look to it, where it doesn't look like it was all just done with one kind of filler.
Is that just acrylic paint?
This is just acrylic paint, and acrylic paint will work fine. Depending on what you're doing with it, if you're trying to go really, really dark, black or really dark brown, I like the powders better because it takes less of it to do it. And this stuff, sometimes if you're trying to make black, turn this white into black, you have to add enough acrylic paint to it that you get kind of a stickiness. It kind of changes the properties of the epoxy a little bit, and you get kind of a stickiness to it that I'm not a real big fan on. But I do use paint for certain things.
Where do you get your trowel?
Hmm?
Your trowel you use?
Oh, these things, you can buy a set of these little modeling tools that you can get them at Harbor Freight, or a lot of, of course, on anywhere on Amazon. But these are by far my favorite tool, because these little stainless steel, they have a little bit of flex to them, but they're just the absolute perfect tool for. They're stiff enough you can push stuff down in there, and then when they get, I don't even clean them at the end of the night. I don't worry about trying to clean them. I'll leave it like that, and then the next time I use it, you just hit it with a heat gun and just heat it up, and then take a knife and it'll come off completely clean. So
Where did those come from?
these came, I actually bought these at a yard sale or something, but I know these are called dental spatula wax carving tools, but I do know Harbor Freight sells this one and this one and another shape that are in, 2 or 3 or 4 package or something. You could get them at any Harbor Freight, but they are handy tools.
What area of Harbor Freight would you look in?
Boy, I don't know. That's always a loaded question. Every time I figure out where stuff is, they move it on me. So I don't know if I know you could find them online pretty easy, but at the local store, if you,
Hobby Lobby too.
yeah, Hobby Lobby probably has them, I'm sure. If you, before you leave, if you take a picture of them with your phone, then walk in and, show one of the people, and they'll know where it's at. But this stuff, by adding a couple of colors to it, you don't have to smooth any of this out, but I'm gonna just give you an idea. This stuff will just smooth like glass with water. So, if there is a reason to flatten it out and get it smoothed down, just dipping your finger in water will do it. And but that one is the go-to for just general repairs and fixing something or repairing something, or and if you wanted to, some of those colors, oranges and the yellows and the reds and things, if you have a reason that you want, if you turn something that has you cut some grooves in it going around, it's real easy to go in and take a bright color or something and just fill all that in, and then sand it on your lathe, and you'll have a red stripe or a whatever color or something band going around it. So works real well for that. Hey Don, you're talking about filling cracks. Could you use this epoxy for like a bow tie or a duck bone? You know, I've had that thought. I have not tried it yet. On making a routered out bow tie, whether it's hand done or routered out or something, and then using the epoxy to do it. I have had the idea, but I haven't tried it. I didn't know whether it had the tensile strength or not. I don't know either. I don't know how it would compare. I guess it would depend on whether you were doing it for looks or whether you were doing it to actually have structural integrity, you know, of stopping the split. So, I don't know. Good question, but I haven't tried it. This other epoxy, which is the Magic Sculpt, is the one that is has kind of an amber and then a opaque white, and this one is a lot stickier. It's less forgiving if you get it on your fingers and stuff, just because it's kind of sticky and nasty to work with, but it does mix up real easily. And so to get, there's two different things here that I've done to try and get a sort of a turquoise looking type fill on this. This one is just to smooth out with a little bit of color mixed into it, just swirled in to kind of break it up and make it look like it's not all one color. This one is the same stuff, same colors used in it, but then I'll just show you instead of tell you here. This one you could take a couple of different colors of it. You can use these mica powders that you know people use in for the poured epoxies. You can use those to tint this stuff with. They make this stuff in a jillion different colors. They have the one, the Matuska Taxidermy Supply catalog. They have a little sample pack that has like 10 different colors in a little small, you know, they're like this size containers, which will go a long ways, of a bunch of different colors. But if you put that in and not over mix it, you'll get a little bit of a blue look to it.
Kind of a marbly effect.
Yeah, kind of a marble type of look, and I don't have the green one that I had a green one that I used, so I'm just going to use just a little bit of green paint. This hole goes all the way through, and I'm not worried about trying to completely fill it for the sake of this, but I may have enough mixed up here to do that anyway. I'm just trying to get a variation of color a little bit of blue, a little bit of green, a little bit of the white that's left, or opaque amber color that's left. And then I discovered these over at, I think I got these at Rockler, and they make a bunch of different colors of this opal, there it is, sorry, fake opal basically. This is the blue-green, but they make reds and oranges and a lot of different colors. The stuff is expensive, but it goes a long, long ways. It just comes in a little container like this, and you can just take your that's got a little bit of epoxy on it, and just reach in and pick up a couple of these and just press them into the top. And then just take and press them down in, and try to keep it, still keep it a little bit proud of the surface, but you're just pressing those little nuggets in there. Let's see. I don't know how well that shows up on the camera, but it is essentially this one I'm going to pass around. This will show you. This one has the nuggets in it. This one is the one that doesn't have. It's just the epoxy by itself. And then this piece is what it would look like when it's filled but not sanded, before it's been sanded. But that's all there is, you know, to doing that little trick, and that can be done. The thing that is nice about these epoxies is if you want to do something, you know, a hollow form or something where you can get to the inside of it. You know, it's as simple as putting a piece of tape on the inside and then filling from the outside and coming back and sanding it to do something to, you know, embellish those spots. And
that second epoxy, is that come in a tube or?
the epoxy?
Oh.
No, they come, the smallest quantities that you're going to be able to buy either one of these in. It's in that catalog, but they're about half the size of a yogurt cup or something. There may be, I don't know what they would be in ounces, maybe 6 ounces, maybe 8 ounces of them, and you know, you get an A and a B on both of those, and that would last. It'll last a long. It's something that's good to split up with a friend or something. You know, get one and split it up, and the stuff does have a really good shelf life on it. It's not prone to drying out bad or anything, and I've used the stuff that's been that I've been using out of the same container sometimes for a year or so. So it is pretty forgiving on that part.
And that's from the taxidermy.
Yeah, these are from. You can get these from Amazon, but you'll find them a little cheaper, I think, through the taxidermy supply.
That's better if you refrigerate it?
There's really not any need. I mean, maybe if you bought a bigger quantity and you weren't gonna share, you could refrigerate it. But I would think that either one of these is an easy year to maybe 2 years on shelf life on it. And the Magic Smooth, the Magic Smooth, the one that's kind of translucent, the semi-transparent side of that is the one that will kind of thicken up and harden up. And if you do have some of that and you notice that it's getting a little thick to use, you can take that one and you can put it in the microwave and heat it up. Don't go crazy, but heat it up in the microwave, allow it to cool overnight or something, and it's good, you know, it's like new the next day. So, so it holds up really well. The other one, this one, I usually just keep a wet sponge in the top of that, and that helps that one is dried out, but that helps with, as you use more and more, you have more air in the container, and I just wet a sponge and just throw it in there, and it helps hold it.
On your sample piece there, you had a couple of brown spots. Is that first one that you showed
The
us?
brown, yeah, the brown spots were this one that's like cookie dough.
That's kind of an idea how much it'll shrink then, the way it's dished out.
Yeah, if it's it's not bad about shrinking, but it's always better to leave it a little proud and then just sand back and then
Will this second stuff, will it shrink?
this stuff, I don't think it's shrinkage as much as just settling on this one. This one is just a little thinner consistency, and depending on how big a cavity or how big a hole it is, I mean, the ideal way would be to put it in a pressure pot and pressure pot it or something, and that would get the bubbles out of it. But it's really not worth the trouble of doing that.
Okay.
If you just leave it a little bit proud, it'll go down in sand. This one, this was a reject bowl that was going to end up on the fire pit, but I brought it just to give you an idea. If you have a crack or something that you're filling, it's just simply doing that. Just get it pushed down into the crack.
Have you already sealed it? Is that what we're seeing?
Well, this one, I would have sealed this one if I was going to save it. This is for demo purposes only, but yeah, I would have sealed it. It's sealing it is not as big a problem if you're using a lighter color, but if you're using something really dark brown, really black, I would suggest sealing that edge if you can. This one, they say you can sand it in 4 hours, but in all fairness, it sands way better if you wait overnight. The one that is more translucent, you can sand it the next day. It's going to sand even easier a day after that. It takes a little longer. It'll have a tendency to gum up the sandpaper if you're too quick on doing it. But for something that's sizable, like this one is, if you had a pith crack, if you had the pith in something or a knot or whatnot that dries too fast and cracks out, this stuff is a great alternative to any other way that you would try to salvage that and fix it, just because it's just so darn easy. Questions?
Just for my memory, would you quickly review the products that you were showing there?
You bet.
The sculpt stuff is the putty-like stuff?
You bet. The epoxy sculpt is the cookie. I call it cookie dough. It's the thicker stuff. Lends itself really well to powdered dyes and/or acrylic paint for opaque, colors. Not that you can't blend some things and mix some stuff
Which is what you
in.
were just putting into the crack on that bowl?
Right. Yeah. This was the epoxy sculpt that I did on the
You
crack.
can get that in a smaller container?
You can get it in a container that's about that big. About 4 or 5 ounces of it or something.
And then the translucent stuff is?
It is called Smooth On, or Magic Smooth. I'm sorry. They make 2 different ones. They make Smooth On, and this is the other company that's Magic Smooth. I like the.
One with the camera, please.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Right there. You want it over here or?
The overhead's fine.
Okay. The Magic Smooth is the one that's kind of translucent. You can't pull off You know how on the epoxy, the ones that people are using Alumilite or urethane resins and adding mica powders to them and then turning them so you have a wood and, you know, and metallic clear type thing. You can't get the translucency with this Magic Smooth that you can with a urethane or something, but for small things and that sort of thing, like the fake turquoise type look on something, it's a perfect solution and way easier than dealing with something that's liquid to try to do. Anything else? Okay, guys, that's all I got.